Roll call. Day 34, Tuesday, February 28th. Anderson? Here. Baldwin? Here. Barlow? Here. Beitman? Here. Boner? Here. Bouchard? Here. Brennan? Here. Case? Present. Cooper? Here. Dockstetter? Here. Ellis? French? Here. Murphy? Here. Guru? Here. Hicks? Hutchings? Hicks, present. Hutchings? Present. Ide? Here. Jones? Here. Kinski? Here. Cole? Present. Landon? Here. Larson? Here. McEwen? Here. Nethercott? Pappas? Here. Rothfuss? Here. Salazar? Here. Schuler? Here. Scott? Here. Steinmetz? Nethercott? Excused. President Driscoll?
Here.
Mr. President, 30 present, 1 excused.
Very good, thank you. Senator Salazar, you want to model that great looking outfit for us? Stand up. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty nice today. What do you think, guys? Yeah. Prayer by Rabbi Moshe Haflon, Mount Sinai Synagogue, Cheyenne.
Good morning. I said yesterday, I don't want to keep you all standing too long. Once again, I want to say thank you. It's an honor to represent Mount Sinai congregation here in Cheyenne. As I said yesterday, rather than always doing a prayer, I'm going to teach you a little scripture, little teaching from our tradition. So there's a book called the Mishnah. Some of you know it because you've heard of it. It was a compilation of oral Jewish law that was finally redacted and written down around 200 of CE, later after Jesus' time. And so to set this up, it'll take longer to set it up than to tell you the story. You know, there's one human being, Adam, at the beginning of all creation. So the rabbis are discussing, and a lot of you are lawyers or things, in a tractate called Sanhedrin. The rabbis of Roman times are discussing how they warn the witnesses, not the accused, but the witnesses in a capital crime. And they say, this is very heavy, what's resting on your shoulders, because capital punishment might be involved. And so they discuss this as the story. Why was only one human being, Adam, from whom all humanity descends, created? And they say several reasons to teach us. One of them is to teach us that whoever destroys a single life is considered by Scripture as if they have destroyed the whole world. And whoever saves a single life is considered by Scripture to have saved the whole world. Stop there, but interestingly, I found a similar passage in the Quran where they're discussing this, but instead of Adam, they refer to Cain killing Abel. For this reason, the children of Israel ordained that whoever kills a person, unless for manslaughter or mischief, and we won't get into that, is as if they have killed all of humanity. I leave it to you to draw your own conclusions. I will only say that in our tradition, life begins at birth, but we said not to get too political. But simply put, if you have the opportunity to help someone, do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Pappas, lead us in the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk will read the journal report, please.
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 27, 2023 has been read and recommends it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
Any objections? Being none, reports adopted. Doctor of the day, Dr. Barlow, you're on for one more day. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, can I have privilege of the floor?
You may.
Mr. President, last night at one of the local establishments, there was a little karaoke contest, and I want to tell you that the Senate went down and prevailed. We provided our colleagues a rendition, a very well rendition, Mr. Chairman, of Friends in Low Places. And consequently, we did a little hind end kicking down with the House, so. And we were led.
Yeah! Here, here!
led-
Who did the singing?
Where's the trophy at?
It's an empty beer bottle.
You know, in Senator Grew,
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
granted.
With us today, I've got a good friend of mine from back home, a fellow who has served his community in many different capacities. Served here at the state level with a few task force that the past governor put together, and also we share the honor of being former county commissioners. I'd like to introduce Paul Vogelheim. Many of you know him right here. Paul? Paul. There you go. All right. Welcome, Paul.
Senator Dockstader,
Privilege of the floor.
granted.
As you well know, it's kind of hard to get back and forth across the state these days. And I've got a great group of well-dressed students in the gallery in front of you who didn't let that detour them. So early yesterday, they loaded up a bus and worked their way out of Star Valley up through Jackson, over Togety, over to Casper, and back down to Cheyenne to come and watch us. Please welcome the Student Government Council of Star Valley Middle School to the Senate.
Here, here. Vice President Kinski,
Privilege of the floor, please.
granted.
So one of the highlights when you're down here at session is always to see a familiar face from home. And one of the best parts of that for me is when we have a large group come down from Sheridan. They have me over for dinner and they want to visit about legislative affairs and so forth. And it's a group of people that just absolutely delightful. And they're here with us in the gallery today. Please welcome Leadership Sheridan's this year's class here in the gallery with us, please.
Welcome. Today in Wyoming history, 1918, the first train to arrive in Buffalo on the Wyoming Railway. Wyoming Railway was a short line running from nearby Claremont to Buffalo, a distance about 28 miles. At Claremont, passengers carry on with the Burlington Northern. Most of the traffic was actually coal. Coal mines near Buffalo went out of business in the 40s, and the railroad filed for bankruptcy in 48. Line was abandoned in 52. You can still see the grain elevators along it and the whole end. And there's actually a wonderful book about one of Eaton's guest ranch people that came in about that time frame when it was 30 below and actually rode in an open car from the east to it. Pretty interesting. Quote for the day: a noble purpose inspires sacrifice, simulates innovation, and encourages perseverance. Gary Hamill. Today's last day for second reading, and we're going to vote on the governor appointments tomorrow, folks. Do we have our cheerleaders here? Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, a little tidbit on that historical. My dad shoveled coal for that railroad. And that engine is sitting in the park down there, courtesy of Green Construction, who was building on the Texaco Dam. So it is still there. Thank you.
Congratulations. The Texaco Dam, for all of you who don't know, is Lake DeSmet. It was a private built dam that the state now owns. So, do we have cheerleaders here? Not yet. So we've invited because, are they here? Okay, well, they'll be here in a minute because we've invited, because of the Senate win, we've invited cheerleaders to come cheer for us today. So, all right. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 27, 2023, message number 456. Mr. President, the House did concur on Senate amendments to House Bill 123, collection of antler or horns by residents and non-residents. Ayes 44, noes 17, excused 1. Message number 457. Mr. President, the House adopted the Committee of the Whole report failing Senate Joint Resolution 11, Convention of States. Ayes 21, noes 41. The bill has been indefinitely postponed. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Concurrences, do we have some? One concurrence. Senator Hicks, are you ready on message number 450 on Senate File 96? I am.
Could I have that read in?
Message number 450, referencing Senate File 96, Omnibus Water Bill, Planning and Administration.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move message number 450, the original Senate File 96, Omnibus Water Bill Planning and Administration. And Mr. Chairman, our colleagues down at the end of the building decided this was a Christmas tree. And they put a lot of decorations on this, and they reference other bills and delete this and cut that and move this around to the point that this Christmas tree has got so many ornaments on it, Mr. Chairman, I can't see the tree anymore. And so I would ask the Senate, vote no on concurrence.
The motion is the Senate do concur on message 450, Senate File 96, and vote no. The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence vote on Senate File 96. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. No. Barlow? No. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks?
No.
No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski?
No.
No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott, excused. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 96, 30 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have failed to concur on message 450 on Senate File 96. We'll send a message that it's not Christmas in the Senate. The committee will be Steinmetz chair, Hicks, and Grew. Undecorate the tree, please. Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have another concurrence that's been floating around for a couple of days that I don't know what became of it, but it's for, it's message 441.
Bring it up.
We have to take this up to the clerk and give it to him,
Okay.
because it's concurrence.
We're about to do it. We're good.
Thank you.
So folks, on the yellow slips, when you bring them to me, the orange ones, if you would put on them the people that you'd like to see on the committee. I'm not telling you I'm going to put them on there, but I will accept explanations from people before to do it. So that's not a normal move, but it's kind of the way I like doing it. I'd just soon have the people conference it. So Senator Cooper, are you ready on message 441 on Senate File 154?
Yes, Mr. President.
Could we have it read in, please?
Message number 441, referencing Senate File 154, Energy Authority Project Financing, Refineries.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move message 441 on Senate File 154 for concurrence, and I request your aye vote. What the House did was take the bill back to the original state that we started in. Didn't weaken the bill at all. We had added one small amendment to it, and they took that amendment back out. It's just fine, just like it sits. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Motion is the Senate do concur on message 441 on Senate File 154 and vote aye. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence vote, Senate File 154. Anderson. Aye. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. No. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. No. Brennan. No. Case. No. Cooper.
Aye.
Aye. Dockstetter. No. Ellis. No. French. No. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. No. Ide. No. Jones. Aye. Kinsky. Aye. Cole. No. Landon. Aye. Larson. No. McEwen. No. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. No. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. No. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 154, 17 aye, 14 no.
By your vote, you have concurred on message 441 on Senate File 154. Okay, we're going to have a little fun break. You know, we're going to celebrate the Senate winning the competition last night. And just in honor of that, we have the South High School cheerleaders coming in to do it. Ladies, we're looking for a cheer for the Senate. This morning, we have a special performance by Cheyenne South High School's cheerleading squad. Group will be performing a Wyoming cheer, special for the Senate. Bison's head coach is Madeline Moyote. She'll do it right for me. Representative Henderson's granddaughter, and the assistant coaches are Kirsten Beltran and Juliana Emmett. Kirsten is the daughter-in-law of Representative Trujillo. Representative Henderson, welcome to the Senate. Say a few words, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege.
Granted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Since the school opened in 2010, they have won 15 4A state championships. Most recently, the Bison squad finished second in the small game non-tumbling division at the UCA Colorado regional tournament in November, earning them a spot to compete at the UCA Nationals early this month in Orlando, Florida. They finished 18th out of 40 teams participating, making Wyoming residents proud. Senators, it is a privilege. Please help me welcome these talented students to the Senate.
Hear, hear. That's got to be one of the best we've had for a long time. Thank you, Representative Henderson. Very enjoyable. Really, really nice. Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. President. I feel like we just failed cheer school, right? I think we had a speaking role and we got, a little late to the game, but we got there.
It's unbelievable what happens when the Senate wins the competition, you know. This is just kind of big time. Joint conference reports. Don't have any. Okay. Conference committee, we're all done. I'll make one before we go. Senator Larson, would you stand up? I want to thank you for your behavior through the session and making an announcement. We're appointing Senator Larson to the Ag Committee. Guys, welcome to the Ag Committee. I'd like to thank you. It's pretty neat watching you go through. Thank you. All right, bills on second reading. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I too want to welcome Senator Larson to the Ag Committee. We're glad to have him. He's been contributing with our interim topics and throughout the session, and we're glad to have him on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you much. Bills on second reading. House Bill 4, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 4 engrossed, Medicaid 12-month postpartum coverage.
House Bill 4 having been read two separate times, the question is, so the bill be read a third time. Hearing no objection is so ordered. House Bill 52, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 52 engrossed, Revisor's Bill.
House Bill 52 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. House Bill 76, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 76 engrossed, Licensing Board's amendments.
House Bill 76 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. House Bill 152, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 152 engrossed, Life is a Human Right Act.
There is an amendment. Can we have the amendment read in?
House Bill 152, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 6, line 2, after.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 152 and ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. President, the reason we're bringing this amendment is just to clear up and make clarifying amendments on exactly what we're trying to do here. And so, Mr. President, the first part of the amendment, the substantial changes are on page 6 after line 4, and we are inserting subsection D after the treatment of the woman for the ectopic pregnancy. We're also talking about treatments for cancer, so this would be for cancer treatments, and if that would may be fatal or harmful to the unborn baby, we're saying that that is not an abortion. And then on page 6, line 10, on the definition of pregnant, after fertilization on line 10, we are inserting when a fertilized egg has implanted in the wall of the uterus. That is just a clarification so that in conjunction with page 9, section B1, which is lines 1 through 8, we're not affecting drugs meant with so that you're not conceiving or any of those other kinds of drugs that we weren't trying to affect here. So you can still do that. That's just clarifying. Then on page 7, lines 1 and 2, we're deleting that entirely and inserting some definitions. This is just the definitions for ectopic pregnancy, which is the pregnancy that occurs when a fertilized egg implants and grows outside the main cavity of the uterus. That's an important distinction. We're also defining lethal fetal anomaly, which means a fetal condition diagnosed before birth. If the pregnancy results in a live birth, there is a substantial likelihood of death of the child within hours of the child's birth. And we're inserting a molar pregnancy, which means the development of a tumor or cyst that may or may not include a placental tissue from the, I'm not sure what that word is, but cells after fertilization of an egg. I'm sure Dr. Baldwin could help me with that. That results in spontaneous abortion for or in uterine fetal demise. So that clears up all of those things. And then page 8 after line 21, we're inserting in the exceptions area to perform an abortion on a woman when the physician's reasonable medical judgment, there is a substantial likelihood that the unborn baby has a lethal fetal anomaly or the pregnancy is determined to be a molar pregnancy. And then at the end in section 9, we're making it effective immediately. I did want to note that the new section we put in for the rape and incest is still in there. I asked that specifically because we have 2 subsection 3 now, but they will just move that one to subsection 4. So it's still in there, Mr. President. I know that that is an important piece of this legislation to you, and I wanted to make sure and clarify that as well. So with that, I would stand for any questions on the amendment.
Any questions? Further discussion? Question being called. Oh, Senator Nethercott. That's close.
Mr. President, thank you. And I would like to thank the sponsors of the amendment for their work in acknowledging the complications associated with pregnancy. I think that this is a responsible amendment, recognizing the profound actions we are taking in the legislature and recognizing the importance of mothers and their children. And so this amendment, I think, addresses many of those concerns, and I'd like to thank the sponsor for bringing it.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none. We're voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 152. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 152 has passed the Senate. We're back on the bill. Senate File 152 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 171, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 171, engrossed state land leases.
House Bill 171 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 208, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 208, School Foundation Program Reserve Account Investments.
There is an amendment. Can we have the amendment read in, please?
House Bill 208, second reading amendment number 1, page 2, line 3, after.
Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would at this time move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 208 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members of the 67th, when we last had this bill before us, I mentioned that we kind of had a half a loaf. We had a lot of the boilerplate language that the good senator from up north pointed out to me, and it is just kind of enacting language. But what the real meat of this bill is this amendment. So if you'll follow along on page 2, line 3, it says, after account, insert the state auditor shall certify to the state treasurer when an unobligated, unencumbered balance of the account first exceeds $500 million. And then line 2, page 2, line 6, delete may and insert shall prior to making any other investments. And then on page 2, line 7, invest not less than 50% of the unobligated, unencumbered balance of these funds in an account with a short-term fixed income grade securities and may invest up to 50% of the unobligated, unencumbered balance of the rest. Where this came from is that our state treasurer, Mr. President, expressed concerns with a lack of direction on the purpose of the school foundation reserve account. This ensures that the balance of $500 million, which is needed in the regular ebb and flow of that account, and then that 50% beyond can be invested in equities. This minimizes the call for investment funds that would require an untimely sale. In other words, putting it in an account where we had to then access it and then have to pay a penalty. So we'll be able to get the best return possible. This is a serious bill. This is a lot of money. On third reading, it'll be asked, it's going to take a 2/3 majority to pass this piece of legislation. But this amendment, in our view, in the sponsor's view, is key to making this work, and I urge your support. And stand for questions.
Further discussion? Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, just a little explanation on how this will interact with the asset allocation portfolio for the other accounts that are reserve accounts that we've accumulated. So is this going to affect, because now we brought in specific language on fixed income and then allows that flexibility. But part of the reason, excuse me, Mr. President, for the reserve accounts was to accumulate these into one asset allocation portfolio, and then that was supposed to be left with the treasurer's office. So is this going to conflict with that? Part of the reason, not only did we do this, the entire reserve account concept was to consolidate all these accounts into one type of investment type portfolio. And that's very important on the back office from the accounting standpoint. When we looked at this, there's just a number of different accounts. And the idea was if we do this, then we have one, you end up with one investment portfolio with a number of things. Does this complicate that and create more difficulties in the back office or not?
Further discussion? Further discussion? Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. The short answer is no. And the reason why is because this is the culmination of that work, the culmination of trying to combine these accounts to put them in one vehicle so we can raise that number, have enough funds for the daily operations that are needed, but then also have enough to be able to get the highest total return. And so that is kind of that suite of bills that we talked about, have been talking about all session long. That was just for you. To get that suite of bills together and get our accounts more transparent and get closer to the day when we have, once again, talking about kitchen table issues, to sit and have a checkbook, a savings account, and so you can see when we spend money on education, when we spend money on other things, we can say, this is where this is coming from, this is the total cost, and here's the money we're allocating. So we know that, and that's going to help us be able to make the critical decisions we need to make going forward. And this amendment and this bill are key to that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 208 involves money. It'll be a roll call vote.
Second reading amendment number 1, House Bill 208. Roll call. Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinski. Aye. Alcoa. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed on the amendment. 30 aye, 1 no.
By your vote, you have passed second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 208. There's another amendment. Could we have it read in, please?
House Bill 208, second reading amendment number 2, delete.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I move adoption of this amendment. Mr. President, this amendment gives us a different approach on this bill. What the bill that's before us now seeks to do is to improve the yields on these school funds. This does that and does it in a much more vigorous way than the bill currently does. What the amendment does, Mr. President, is it increases the amount that is in the reserve account that this bill is amending from 60 million to 200 million. And then it deposits that into the common school account within the permanent land fund. So it takes it from reserves that are spendable to permanent funds where the interest and the earnings will be greatly improved and those will be spendable permanently, not just one time. So it's a very useful procedure. It increases, Mr. President, the yield on these funds. Means that will add to our permanent savings. And Mr. President, we've been seeing things being done with bills and we're learning from that. And this will make this bill much more effective and much more useful to the Senate. And with that, Mr. President, it does change the innards of the bill, because if you're going to deposit into a permanent account, you achieve the higher earnings, but you don't need the 2/3 vote, because we remove that provision of directly creating a new account that can be invested in stocks. We put it into an existing account, and that doesn't take a 2/3, Mr. President. So that's an advantage with this approach, and I would urge its adoption by the Senate.
Further discussion? Further discussion. Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. President. On and against, and I think the concept is a good concept, but there is an awful lot of related legislation and work going on through the Capital Finance Committee to create a more uniform model of how reserve accounts work, how funds work, all of the portions in each of those to get optimization of yield. And I don't think it's a good choice for us to be doing this on sort of an ad hoc basis, one bill at a time. I think we need to be looking towards that strategy. And ideally, when we get to the point where the reserve accounts are full at the level that they're being set to, the bulk of those reserve accounts are going to be, I guess, what we'd call semi-inviolate, where they're not constitutionally inviolate, but they're not to be touched, so that those can then comprehensively be invested in equities, which is consistent with actually what this amendment is trying to do. It seems that we are undoing, through this amendment, the efforts of the Cap-Fin committee to come up with a consolidated, comprehensive strategy. So while I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with the thought going towards the amendment, it's just that it's moving against the current of what I see as an overall very positive body of work by the Cap-Fin committee. So I guess I'd like to hear from Cap-Fin to see if I'm mistaking this, but it looks to me like it's undoing some of the work that we've been watching the Cap-Fin committee do.
Thank you. Further discussion. Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, I would applaud the senator from Bates Creek. I think it's an extraordinarily clever idea he's come up with. This is an important bill we need to pass. We can't risk it failing for one of the 2/3. I think it's just, thank you. It's brilliant. On and for the amendment.
Further discussion. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to try to discuss what the effect of this is it's going to move this money into the corpus. It still does not stop the flow coming into the reserve account. So that's this, when this $200 million fills up, it'll go in there. You're still going to have that flow coming into the reserve account. It's just going to take a lot longer to fill the reserve account up, but it will result in the fact that now that you're into the corpus and it is inviolate, it's harder to get at. it does have the potential to generate a higher rate of return. So it intercepts the money that once that fills up and tips, those flows still keep coming into the reserve account. So it's just going to take several years longer to fill that reserve account up. It's a policy decision. Do you want to put the money where future legislators can't rate it or not? Or you leave it in a reserve account, which we would hope that people would recognize that the reserve account's there to provide that buffer so they can invest those in the corpus that's right now, it's income driven. So really, it's one of those things that I think accomplishes the best of both worlds. It's just a decision is how fast do you want to fill up the reserve account versus how much money you want to put into the permanent funds. And so it doesn't get rid of the reserve accounts. It's a timing issue. It may take 7 years to fill up the reserve accounts now or 8, but you've still put that money in the corpus. So I hope that provides an explanation. It's strictly a policy decision. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's kind of consistent with Senate position, historically, that we wanted more into the permanent funds. So hope that explanation provides that.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Senator Grew.
Thanks, Mr. President. That's kind of one of those voted up, voted down. It is definitely, it's an idea. This amendment does achieve some goals. I actually think, I would argue that voting no on this is the more conservative approach. But, and I understand what's been said, 2/3 majority is a high threshold. It's a high threshold, Mr. President, because this is an important vote when we take it on final on third reading. So I think that, it is a policy decision. I'm going to be voting no on this, but it's kind of a voted up, voted down. And like I say, I'll be taking the more conservative approach. Thanks, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none. Senator Scott, I was going to cut the debate a lot shorter. Go ahead, Senator Scott.
Mr. President, summing up on and for, what this doesn't is it accelerates the movement of funds into a place where they will get the higher yield, where they'll be permanently available. And as chairman of your education committee, Mr. President, having the funds permanently available to earn revenues that will help us in the future is important. I think education is well funded currently, so guaranteeing that will last into the future is super important. So that's what this amendment does, Mr. President. It achieves the purposes of the bill, but achieves them a lot quicker, and that's well worthwhile. And it does, I think, help the Senate's position overall significantly that we're willing to take some steps. And I think that's important, Mr. President. So I would urge an aye vote.
We're voting on second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 208. Involves money. This will be a roll call vote.
House Bill 208, second reading amendment number 2. Roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, 21 aye, 10 no.
By your vote, second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 208 is passed the Senate. We're back on the bill. House Bill 208 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. House Bill 222, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 222 engrossed, Colorado River Advisory Committee.
House Bill 222 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Bills on third reading. There is no consent list. Let's do the bills. House Bill 17, third reading of the House bill.
House Bill 17 engrossed, State Lands Grazing of Non-Owned Livestock, sponsored by the Agriculture Committee, an act relating to state lands.
There is an amendment. Could we have the amendment read in, please?
House Bill 17, third reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, delete.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 17 and ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. President, as you know, we've laid this bill back several times, trying to get the language exactly right because it's very important to our lessees and to our office and to our executive downstairs. And so we're trying to get this exactly right. So what we've done is this amendment basically becomes the bill. Down to line 26 really is no change from what we had done last time. But what we're doing is we're going ahead and we're saying, yes, you can run non-owned livestock and you don't have to get approval of the director. However, on subsection A, line 32, the ratio of owned to non-owned livestock grazed by the lessees does not exceed a 1-to-1 for more than 2 years in any 10-year period. B, the lessee provides documentation on the lessee's grazing of non-owned livestock to the Office of State Lands and Investments. So that takes out the need to promulgate rules and have that cumbersome process. C, the lessee retains full management responsibility of the livestock that grazes on the state lands, and we have talked about full management responsibility in the previous amendment, so we just brought that in, and if you turn your amendment over in lines 1 through 5, that just further explains what full management responsibility is. And so, Mr. President, I think we've threaded the needle pretty carefully here, trying to take all parties into consideration, and that's what we've come up with. And so I'd stand for any questions on the amendment.
Questions on the amendment? Questions on the amendment? Seeing none, question being called. Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. President. I believe this is replacing the previous amendment, and the previous amendment had specific language about an additional fee charged to the Office of State Lands associated with doing this sort of pseudo-sublease process, and that would be pursuant to rule and regulation. I don't see that here, but I was just quickly trying to track in exactly what the language is here relative to the previous language, so perhaps it existed there before. So what is the status of the additional fee imposed by the Office of State Lands for managed cattle?
Senator Scott.
And, Mr. President, I would emphasize I've got a conflict on this bill. What does this do where you have a circumstance where the state lands are a small part of what's being leased out and there isn't owned livestock involved in it, particularly it's a straight lease with the rancher providing the management services and whatnot. Is that still possible with this amendment? Does it affect that sort of situation? What's the impact on that situation?
Senator Steinmetz.
Mr. President, we traded the fee for the subsection A that is to not exceed a 1-to-1 for more than 2 years in a 10-year period. The older language still applies in subsection D about contracts and subleases. And so that takes care of, I believe, your question to the good tall senator from Bates Creek. And this basically allows you, if you have non-owned livestock and you have a small parcel, then you retain the management for that. And your lease can't be vacated it's a violation of your sublease. It would not be a sublease any longer if your non-owned livestock is managed by you and does not exceed a 1-to-1 for more than 2 years in any 10-year period. So that's what it does.
Thank you. We're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 17. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 17 has passed the Senate. We're back on the bill. House Bill 17 having been read 3 separate times. Oh, this is a roll call, excuse me. House Bill 17, state lands, grazing and non-owned livestock, having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 17, third reading, roll call. Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Garou. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinski. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott Conflict. Scott Conflict. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll. Conflict. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 17, 27 aye, 2 no, 2 conflict.
House Bill 17, state lands, grazing of non-owned livestock, having received the affirmative vote of the majority members elected to Senate, House Bill 17 has passed the Senate. House Bill 74, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 74 engrossed, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, sponsored by the Travel Committee, an act relating to state lands.
There is an amendment. Can we have the amendment read in, please?
House Bill 74, third reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 10, line 15, after.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 74. This amendment should look very familiar, Mr. President. We passed a similar version of this amendment yesterday, which was struck by a subsequent amendment when we moved the whole governance section. What I'm doing here, Mr. President, is to ensure that we keep this idea alive, that when this program finally does get up and moving and implemented, it respects the same things that we approved yesterday, which are to have a more formal process from this agency and to allow for more public comment and participation, to consider the charter aspects of some of these parks and gifts to the state, that we consider things about mitigating crowding, avoiding competition with private industry, and support the maintenance of these resources, which are going to last way beyond this Senate and they will be part of Wyoming's heritage forever, Mr. President. I think we have to respect them. So I ask for your favorable consideration. It's really just a declaration of intent. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further comments? Further comments? Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think there's some good stuff in here, but I think this will all be fleshed out in a more comprehensive way as we take this back to the interim, we work this stuff. And again, I commend the bringer of the amendment from a standpoint that I think he highlights things that absolutely need to be discussed. But some of my concerns with the way the amendment's structured is when it talks about enrollment at A is injurious to natural resources. I don't know necessarily, I mean, that could be in a lot of forms and capacities, is what constitutes injury as it relates to public recreation. Again, protecting cultural and historical and concerns for wildlife habitat. I think we can have a very robust component about consultation with the agency that oversees that wildlife. I think that will probably come in the future context. Again, and I look at the Romanet D and it gets to the end and it talks about maintenance of resources in a natural state. Natural states are always in flux. That's the nature of a natural state. You have floods, you have catastrophic wildfires, you have beetle pandemics, you have all of these things. So natural state is when do we fix that in time? That becomes a little bit complicated to define that from a standpoint that the very nature of the natural state is constantly in flux. And so I think this brings in a guidelines to start looking at this, but I don't know that we need to put this in the bill at this point in time. I think we've got the direction. Certainly, I think these are issues, but I think it needs a little more fleshed out other than to put these in there. My concern is if we put this in there now, this will drive the structure of the bill. While it all needs to be addressed, this doesn't need to drive the structure of what we're going to try to accomplish with the management of these. So I would ask you to defeat this amendment at this time. I think we bring this in as part of the interim topics to be incorporated in the bigger context of the governance and the application of the program. So on and against the amendment.
Are you Senator Ellis? Did you? Okay. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I got a frog in my throat. Sorry about that. Just to piggyback a little bit on the majority floor leader, I feel the same way. The bringer of the amendment, I think, has good intentions. And I think we, as we study this bill, if it passes, and get into it a little bit more with the governance and setting up how this will work, I think obviously these things will be paramount. We are gonna, this will be one of our interim areas I'm sure that we will take a closer look at. And I just think it's too onerous right now. It's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. So I again would, you know, even though the intent I think is good, I think if you take a look at what our Parks and Rec folks and our outdoor ed folks and all of them in the past, I think they've, if you even go to their website, you can see that they have all these things in mind right now. Maybe we need to focus on them a little bit more once we get this bill set up and get it moving forward, but I would be on and against this.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, frankly, I think this amendment is needed at this point. This agency, at least the experience in our area, it needs to have a degree of restraint and a degree of public involvement. And I don't see things here that are going to be onerous or harmful, but I do see things that will make them think about what they're doing, because I've seen some cases where I didn't think they were. And you're talking about consideration of expenditures that are not injurious to natural resources. That's a matter of judgment, and they need to have public advice, because I think their thinking on occasion has not been broad enough on that score. It's something, if we do work in the interim, maybe we can work out a better, more formal process. But Mr. President, for now with this bill, I think this amendment is entirely appropriate and urge its adoption.
The comments, Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. I really appreciate the passion that my friend from Fremont County brings to issues like this. He represents a part of the world that, boy, is it one of the great spots we have. I'm going to just push back a little. I think we can take up all of these issues as we go along and involve a lot more public. Take it to the interim committee work. I just feel like we would get a little bit better product. There are just a couple pieces of language in here that I just am struggling to figure out why we would want to sideboard and constrict the efforts to that really the trust fund stands for. And that, you know, when you say that expenditures that mitigate crowding, I think of the park that's not very far from here. That's actually part of the issue that we may want to expend some of this trust fund effort in future years to assist in things like parking. And by doing that, it may by its very nature, Mr. President, compete, for example, against private industry. I'm not sure that you can avoid either one of those sorts of things in some of the projects that we'll be looking at going forward. I just would like to see this get a lot more time and a lot more input. So with all great respect to my good friend in the back, I'm going to be voting against this one. Thank you.
Further discussion. Further discussion. Senator Case for your second time.
Mr. President, thank you very much. We had a bill yesterday that had no sideboards whatsoever. That was a free-for-all, giving carte blanche to a commission and an agency to make expenditures as they saw fit. And we pulled back on that. We said, you know, there's something more important. We don't like the way that you've been doing it so far. And some of the things that several of us have been talking about, but haven't seemed to get very far in this body or in our interim committee. It's really important in my hometown. You know, to use one specific, there's a park south of Lander. It existed before the state parks came in. It's a natural resource park. It's mostly owned by the Game and Fish. They own the bulk of the property there, and it's used for critical wildlife range, especially critical winter range. It's very important. The state parks itself only owns a fraction of the acreage. So this is really important. Another important area is South Pass Historic Site. And that's, you know, that's an essential piece of Wyoming history to be maintained in a historical sense. And some of the developments there are a little bit disturbing to some. So there was concern about this carte blanche fund. We said, all right, we're going to start over. We're going to take away all those guidelines and we're going to start over with this. But I would like to leave the seed of what is important. Parks are different. Some are very commercial enterprises like marinas. Some are natural history. We created another one. We gave property to the state park to manage where a very important archaeological site is. We did that this session. So this is a placeholder a bit, Mr. President, but it'll help to focus people's thinking as they move towards the interim and go forward. They can change every word of this, every single word of this, get rid of it. But for right now, it's just a placeholder. And it says, hey, as you move forward, at least think about these factors. Because I guarantee you, Mr. President, no one's thought about these factors so far. Thank you, sir. Ask for your consideration.
Question being called. We're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 74. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 74 has failed to pass the Senate. We're back on the bill. House Bill 74, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 74, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Brennan? Excuse me, Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Murphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 74, 18 aye, 13 no.
House Bill 74, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 74 has passed the Senate. House Bill 89, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 89 engrossed, State Investment Returns Adequate Reserve Funding, sponsored by the Capital Finance Group, an act relating to the investment of state funds.
Question being called. House Bill 89, State Investment Returns Adequate Reserve Funding, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 89, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Murphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 89, 25 aye, 6 no.
House Bill 89, State Investment Returns Adequate Reserve Funding, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the Senate, House Bill 89 has passed the Senate. House Bill 185, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 185 engrossed, Local Government Distributions Revisions, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, an act relating to local government funding.
House Bill 185, Local Government Distributions Revisions, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 185, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? I. Cole. I. Landon. I. Larson. No. McEwen. No. Nethercott. I. Pappas. I. Rothfuss. I. Salazar. No. Schuler. I. Scott. I. Steinmetz. No. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 185, 18 aye, 13 no.
House Bill 185, Local Government Distributions Revisions, having received the affirmative vote of the majority members elected to the Senate, House Bill 185 has passed the Senate. House Bill 209, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 209, Hathaway Scholarship Amount Accounts Transfer Timing, sponsored by Capital Finance, an act relating to education.
Question being called. House Bill 209, Hathaway Scholarship Accounts Transfer Timing, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 209, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 209, 31 aye.
House Bill 209, Hathaway Scholarship Accounts Transfer Timing, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 209 has passed the Senate. Do we have any reports to read in? Okay, we'll do the reports, and I'll do that.
From the House of Representatives, February 28, 2023, message number 468. Mr. President, the House adopted Joint Conference Committee number 1 on House Bill 22, State Land Lease Deficiencies Cure Process. Ayes 61, excused 1. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Do we have any other concurrences? That's it. Okay. We're waiting for a report to be distributed. While we're doing that, Senator Steinmetz, can you make your announcement on the forest meeting so we kind of know it may affect what we do for coming
Yes,
back?
Mr. President. Today at 1 p.m. in Capitol Extension Room 4, we will have the annual Forest Health Briefing with the National Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management. So we hope you will join your Joint Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee there for that good briefing.
How long would you expect that to take, Senator Steinmetz?
Mr. President, we're expecting 1 hour.
Okay, I think we're distributed. Senator Steinmetz, are you ready on message number 359 on House Bill 22? If you're ready, we'll have the report read in.
Message number 359, referencing House Bill 22, State Land Lease Deficiencies Cure Process, signed by Representatives Eklund, Crago, and Davis, Senators Steinmetz, Boner, and Hicks.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd move Joint Conference Committee report referencing Senate Message Number 359, which was originally House Bill 22, State Land Lease Deficiencies Cure Process, and ask for an aye vote on the report. Mr. President, what we did is we went back and met with our House committee who had worked through the interim and also took our interim chairman with us. And what we did is when we had added our subsection C, we accidentally combined notice for non-conflicting and conflicting leases. So we've separated that back out to section A and B of the report, which is on page 1, and you'll see that where we separated that out. The other thing that we did was we said not less than 120 days prior to the expiration date of the lease, and when we really needed to provide a window of that 120 days to then the 40 days before, so we tightened that language back up. And then on the second page, on subsection D, there's a very important provision, and that just says that it provide notice that a lessee's failure to submit a renewal application or to remedy all deficiencies in the lessee's renewal application before the expiration of the lease may result in the leased lands becoming vacant. And I know several of us have had real concerns with that over the years, so we're trying to prevent these leased lands from becoming vacant. Everything else is just basically a little bit of reorganization and cleanup. It's turned out very well, I think, between the Senate and House positions, so I'd ask for your aye vote on this report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion, Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is, where you've landed now, how is that different from oil and gas leasing on state land? Are they going to be treated differently now than ag leases? Have we set up a different system for both?
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there is a little bit difference because in our active admissions, it says when we accepted these are school trust lands that grazing leases have to be termed at a maximum of 10 years versus a mineral lease is you're leasing the ability to produce those minerals in basically in perpetuity as long as you're producing them. So it's really two different constructs. This is the way we even do gravel pits and everything else. And the active admission that specifically calls out grazing leases have a term of 10 years. And so that's the big differential between what they do with a lot of other leases within the Office of State Lands.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Further questions? Senator Biden for your second time.
Sorry, for my second time, I guess I should have been more specific on the deficiencies. So if you are a holder of a state lease for, say, mining or oil and gas, and you're deficient, there's certain parameters you have to meet or else you lose the lease. Are these different with ag now because of this bill? I just need to know so I can base my vote. You know, I don't want to treat certain entities differently just because of who they are. I think it should be fair across the board. So as far as deficiencies go, have we carved out a special treatment for ag leases as opposed to mineral and oil and gas?
Senator Steinmetz.
Mr. Chairman, what we have done is we've made sure that the notification is very robust. And so if there is a deficiency, they have to notify and they have to let them know in a timely manner and give them the opportunity. The problem we're trying to solve is that notice was not occurring. If there was a deficient application, you were just non-renewed and you could have your lease become vacant. And so that's what this does. I apologize, I don't know as much about oil and gas as maybe some in the room do, but that's what it does on behalf of agriculture. I think if there are some tweaks that need to be made in other areas for other industries, that is not contemplated in this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, I would just add on that this is probably a little more robust notification system if there's deficiencies or delinquencies in a lease than what we would have for minerals. The remedy is still the same. if you don't correct it in a certain period of time, you lose your lease. It's gone. So I hope that helps my colleague. I don't know if it specifically answered his question, but at the end of, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, if you don't correct all these things, your lease is terminated.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for a little bit more background, we did specifically solicit input from the oil and gas industry if they wanted anything changed with state lands, and they did not, ask for anything specifically. So I think that additional context perhaps would be helpful.
Other discussion? Okay, question being called. Motion is that the Senate do adopt Joint Conference Committee Report number 1 on message number 359 on House Bill 22, State Land Lease Deficiencies Cure Process, and you've been asked to vote aye. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 22, Joint Conference Committee Report Number 1, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? Aye. Rothbus? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Scott, conflict. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Conflict.
Conflict. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Joint Conference Committee Report 1, House Bill 22, 25 aye, 4 no, 2 conflict.
By your vote, you have adopted reference message 359, House Bill 22, State Land Deficiencies Cure Process. Senate has adopted it. Anybody want to claim the group that's above me that came in? Yeah. Senator Hutchings.
Wow, Senator, or Mr. President, that was pretty cool. You saw him come in. I'd like the body to welcome a group of teen-packed youth. This group seeks to inspire youth in their relationship with Christ and train them to understand the political process, value their liberty, defend the Christian faith, and engage the culture around them. These are just a wonderful group of kids, and I'd like the body to welcome them to the Senate.
Welcome and thank you. We're going to stand at ease to the sound of the gavel for a couple minutes here. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand in recess until 3:30.
Thank you. All right, everybody, we've done great work. We're down to, we got a handful of bills coming in tomorrow of ours. There'll be, at this point, basically concurrences from the House, and they've got a pretty big third reading today, so we'll come in at 3:30, announce those committees. Tomorrow will probably be another fairly short day, folks. So congratulations to the Senate. You guys have earned what you're getting. With that, announcements. Senator Steinmetz, do you have an announcement?
I'll do it one more time, Mr. President. At 1 o'clock today, we will be having our annual Forest Health briefing with the National Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management at 1 p.m. in Capitol Extension Room W4. So we hope you'll all be there with your bright, smiling faces.
Further announcements. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Joint Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Group will be meeting today upon noon recess. Now, they may be getting out a little bit later, so we'll just have to hang out until they're done. But Capitol Extension Room EO5 to discuss interim topics. And we're going to see if we can arrange to get our interview done a little sooner with the gentleman that's coming from Casper for our governor appointee. So we'll see. I'll have to let the folks know about that one. So thank you.
Good. Further announcements. Seeing none. Yep. Everybody check your emails. The pages will be available to help you clean your desks out. Friday's going to be recess for the summer. So anybody needs help cleaning your desk out, you'll have an email to get ready to go. With that, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion is passed. Senate is adjourned till recess till 3:30 p.m.